Quindexter here, and moving into part 2 of the moss farm slash bone meal farm design. I did a fair amount of work, a lot of trial and error off camera, because that was actually super frustrating, but I've learned a few new things on the way, and I'll kind of walk you through what this mess of spaghetti is actually for right now. If you can remember last time I said that we needed, and if you haven't seen that video, definitely check that out, part 1. You'll find the link in the description below. But what I said is we need 4 timed circuits. We need kind of 2 up here, or this is kind of one to dispense bone meal into the moss block to turn the blocks below into moss, and then a short delay and a piston to clear any items off the top of the moss block, because moss blocks can't mossify things if they've got something sitting on top of it. So this is just a very simple, and the lever here kind of shows how it works. There's a pulse that goes into this, and then there's a short delay through this repeater that fires the piston, and currently this is just really placeholder. That was the easy bit. Moving on to the slightly more complicated piece, over here, and I'll flick the switch in a second, I needed a timed circuit to fire the stone generator after the lava has turned the blocks below into stone and pushed another set of stone blocks out, and that's about a one and a bit second delay there needed. So I created a very old design, still working today, Java and in Bedrock, and this is an Etho hopper clock. How this works is there's 2 hoppers facing into each other, and you put items into one, and the circuit will essentially take everything out of one hopper, put it into the other. That comparator will then fire, and it will push the redstone block to the other side, and then and then it starts again. So depending on how many items in here, this will go backwards and forwards. That sends a signal out of here, so powered by the redstone block, underneath the hopper clock added piston, which I'll talk about in a second, and then powers this redstone, and that goes every, well, it's kind of 5 items. It's perfectly timed to then make sure that this has a chance to regenerate and push the stone out, crushing the moss blocks there. So that's that piece. Over here, next to it, I've added a piston firing up, which will trigger an observer, which then sends a signal down here, and this repeater is set on 1 tick, just so that we get a single pulse out, goes all the way down here, and comes into, ta-da, another hopper clock. And this hopper clock is designed to power the water dispensers to clear any of the items off the top of it over yonder. This one is set differently, so it's got 4 items in it at the moment, but the timing is not right just now. And this will fire, this will take 1 pulse out of here, which will come over and turn this redstone torch off, which will allow the hopper clock to do kind of like 1 cycle. So it slows this hopper clock down. But once the piston does fire and the redstone block moves over, this hopper will feed back into it, so it will operate as normal as a normal hopper clock would. It will fire back over here, get locked until it gets another set of, at the moment, 4 pulses to actually activate this, and then it's got 4 hopper items which will then push it again. This, and you can see remnants of other activity over here, where I was trying to use an observer at the end here to observe the water coming to the edge and then come back and then try and fire this. It was just going into an infinite loop. So a little bit of googling later, I came up with this very simple design, which essentially sends 2 pulses out. One which comes here through this repeater and will power the dispensers pushing water out, and then this is set on 4 ticks, so the second pulse will essentially do the same thing and pull the water bucket back in again. So we have 1 signal coming out of here, it's turned into 2 signals, slightly delayed, and that is timed. This actually is timed perfectly to allow water to dispense across the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. So let me flick the poorly placed on lever, and we'll see what happens. So you probably can't hear that, but I can hear a slight sizzle, which means that the stone has been generated, and this is moving at exactly the right place to push And you can see moss kind of going over there, push the stone to break all the moss blocks. Right? And then when this comes back, it actually powers this piston on every cycle, which sends this signal down this redstone line, pulses through these repeaters, and then into here. And what you'll see is that's got 5 items in, this has got 4, but this doesn't power as frequently because it only activates, you can see the redstone torch flash on and off there, that removes 1 item, and then that will then operate and slide back. As I said, that timing's not set up just yet. I do have another world version which I'll just jump into a second, which will show you how that works. But essentially the water will fire out. You can see pretty much it just goes to the edge and it's wiped everything off the top here. Let's just pop into an updated version of this so that I can show you what I've done to improve and add on to it. What I've changed is some timings with regards to this. The rest of the circuitry is the same. And I've just added on to the stone generator red line a repeater which sends power up to the same circuit that was here with the lever. So this will now operate. This bit is not optimally timed. That needs to be sorted out. But now everything kind of around here should be working. So let's flick the switch. So you can see that the number of items in here now is 1 there, 2, so it's 3. So I've just moved it down by 1. This is generating the moss. Problem is that the piston doesn't automatically retract. So if this fires again before that's retracted, because it gets retracted after this dispenser fires, we lose 1 cycle of making bone meal. But you can already see that the bone meal is kind of stacking up. So I think, not really meant to happen. Put some glass here eventually. But this is to all intents and purposes working. I could just leave it like this, but I wouldn't be happy with that because what I want to do is move all the redstone back as a little sign to remind me. This is sprawling, which I think is fine for working out circuits. Keep it all open and free, give you space to change things. But this could all be moved to this side, so it powers on the opposite redstone line. This redstone going underneath here seems a little bit stupid because I could just take it out across here. That needs to go down there. This is just a reset switch, so I can get rid of that. All of this can be moved closer, and this circuit could actually be moved into this space. This could be rotated 90 degrees. So that's the next update to do, and also start getting the storage system in here. Right, so this is already powered on, and as you can see, there's a lot less going on, but it's all the same redstone. Over here we've got the same timer, but I've actually moved the piston observer circuit from this side over to this side, which makes it a lot more compact. I've also moved this slightly this way to make it shorter, and I've rotated this circuit unchanged from facing here, well actually it was over here, to facing this way, and it does exactly the same thing over here, but it's in a slightly different position. You can see I've already started putting some hoppers over here to feed into the dispenser. That's not yet connected. Down here, very simply, I've put in the rails. That will pick up anything that falls through underneath. And there's glass now in here to keep the water at bay. So that hopper minecart should get everything, and it has a stop and delivery circuit. That's what this does. So there's a repeater facing into that block, some redstone there, a repeater into here, going to a detector rail. Slightly different from the Java version, which doesn't require this little side bit, but if you take this out, it doesn't work on Bedrock. This essentially means that if it goes round and it picks up a bunch of stuff, it will sit here dispensing everything it can before it goes back on its merry way. That gets fed through from here into these hoppers into this chest. The chest then has 2 composters through hoppers below, and this will be generating bone meal. So next thing we need to do is we need to start working on probably putting glass here to stop rogue bone meal just kind of flying out, but then also work to attach the top to here. And the idea is to make sure that we can either have one of these chests powering up the farm and the other chest being able to take bone meal, or switch a hopper off so that we store items. Well, we want to be able to capture the items, the moss and everything else for use. Probably this will be mainly used for bone meal, I imagine, but we might want to get copious amounts of greenery for projects as and when, and it works fast enough to probably only run it partially on that type of setup. Right, so here we are. Nothing really has changed over here. You can now see some glass. This is what I'm planning to do to feed the bone meal in. There's a couple of levers here, so I can turn essentially the bone meal piece off and capture in this chest all of the good green stuff. Let's turn the farm on so we're actually getting something being created. Lever is going to obviously move, that's loud, move somewhere else so it's slightly more convenient. That should be, yep, that's working there. These composters should be pushing bone meal. Bone meal will stay in this chest while this is running in bone meal mode, and any bone meal that comes into this chest will come down through these hoppers into this dropper clock. There's the words I was looking for, and should spit out bone meal here, in theory, if bone meal is being generated. Is bone meal being generated? Yeah, maybe we should just give this a bit of a... There we go. And there's the bone meal. So we'll have a bubble vator pushing with water, pushing it up here. We'll have water across these hoppers, more than enough, and then down into the dispenser. So I'll leave this noisy thing running, and we'll just do this piece. This still seems to be working. That's going. I have still got some of this. Let's just stop that from happening. Push that there, and actually glass across the top here. So it's not making enough bone meal out of one composter to self-feed itself. And that could be that actually having it... No, it would need to wait here. Maybe that I need to end up removing all of the rails and just replacing them with hoppers all the way into this chest rather than waiting for the minecart. Right, I need to do a little bit of testing. I'll come back after I've done that. Sadly, this is not going anywhere near as efficiently as I was hoping it would be. But you live and learn. And I am learning. A couple of changes I think need to be made. Hoppers all the way under here. That's really expensive. I wanted to try and keep the costs down. Might see if I can get away with that. But ultimately, I think the problem is we're not making enough of the conversion of these blocks into moss and then breaking them fast enough. This is 1.5 seconds to generate one line, which will crush one line's worth of moss blocks. And this is using probably 4 or 5 bone meal just to end up converting like 3 or 4 blocks a time per bone meal. And that's not efficient. I do still need to work out why it's only doing to the left of this. That's another problem. Everything else is kind of working apart from some of the bone meal does get stuck up there. How much was that? Ah, that's 39. That's quite a lot. glass. That would work. If I can do this quickly enough. There we go. So that should stop that from going. 39. That's still less than the 61 I put in. And we're out. And there's no point in creating a farm that just powers itself to create nothing. So what are my options? One, look at the storage system to make that faster, but that won't increase the number of blocks. Two, actually move the bubble vator somewhere else, probably here-ish, and put a second stone generator on this side, which would need to be powered from this. Got to put my little grey cells to work here and work out whether I have a second, well, a third hopper clock. I don't really want to. Or work out a way of getting that redstone signal from right there over to a stone generator here. Stone generators are cheap and easy. That's not a problem. So back again, and what you can see is I've started breaking stuff out. So I've completely removed the bubble vator and all of that stuff. I've removed the piston firing. I replaced all the stone with stone, and at least that now that seems to at least generate over the whole area. So we were only getting these like 5 by 3, 15 blocks being done. It would appear that like if you've got something one air gap above, including a moss block, it won't create. So this stone will never be mossified, but that one bone meal has done pretty much everything apart from this corner over here and these three there. Now, I think the most efficient way of doing this, and I think I spoke in the first video, is actually to have stone being generated and pushed in from both sides. So we've got that built on this side. Total mirror of this one, right? As you can see, looks the same. It's powered by the same redstone line coming over in this direction. Should get all the way to the end, I think. Yes, should do. Can always add another repeater. And for timing wise, just do it manually. We get a lot more here. And it should break them a lot faster. Well, twice as fast because it's pushing from both directions. Which means we should be able to run the moss block back at the original speed. That works a lot better. Of course, I had to dismantle half the farm in order to do it. Redstone farm building. I need to build this circuit back in again and work out where I put. It probably makes sense to have the bubble vator here, which means I removed all of this down here. Now just to work out where to put the bubble vator, which will come in over the top, I guess, and then I need to reconnect this, and what I will probably do is remove this and just power it back. Don't need you. Right. So if I was to put some bone meal in here, that's looking a lot healthier. Okay, and then in our chests, I'll just let it run for a second or two. 34 in that one. Nothing in. Why is there nothing in that one? Oh, because I haven't actually switched it on. So if I was going to let them both compost down, let's get rid of those hoppers. So we're just filling the chests. Oh, it's going to be loads. I suppose when it does fire and the water is there, I'll lose a bone meal. Like just then, or partial. So I might actually slow down the water a little bit. which slowing down the water is going to be easy because I can just put one more block in here. Anything you like. Bob's your uncle. That will fire the water less often. Okay, right, so I will put the bubble vator back in here, coming out of these two, and then do straight up. So, the bubble vator's back in again, and whether you could follow that time lapse or not, it shouldn't really matter. It's a fairly simple thing I don't need to go over. This is back to the way it was. We can see that this thing is still powered with the same double observer clock, which may or may not work on the realm. Those things can be a little bit buggy, but we can always check to see how that works out. And time to do a little bit of a test. So here we go. Flick this lever. That seems to be firing. I've delayed this. I've added a few extra blocks into this hopper clock, Etho hopper clock. We have that running. Do we have our minecart running? Okay, that's working. This is going hell for leather. I moved the piston above because from the side it would have been blocking another 1 or 2 blocks here. So that seems to be working okay and firing appropriately. So we have an operational Moss Farm built by yours truly. Not without a few wants to rage quit, but got there in the end. We could actually run it for 5 minutes and see, and then just extrapolate for a quick test. Let's do it for 5 minutes. What's the time now? I'll set a timer in just a second. Let's just switch this off. Let it totally settle. Test number 1. I'm going to leave 12 bone meal in the dispenser up here for the moss farm. There's no moss anywhere. I've cleared out the chests down here, so they have nothing in it. This chest will be for bone meal. This chest will be to feed the farm. Minecart is doing its thing. That should be empty. And it's okay. So 5 minutes. I'll do this on speed up. Go. Right, that's 5 minutes done. There or thereabouts. I'm just going to let it finish its thing. And then we can do a little bit of maths, work out what we've got. Okay. Right, everything's seemed to have calmed down. Everything's off. We ended up back up here. So this, I think if you were watching the time lapse, you may have noticed that it ran dry a few times. Maybe 3, 4 plus times during the 5 minutes, and up with not particularly fast refeeding of bone meal from one composter. What we got in this chest was 30 bone meal. So that's the 50% powered, and obviously I wasn't doing drops for the moss and everything else. I think if we switched it off, and this doesn't quite work with switching it off at the moment because I have to unpower both, so it wouldn't be feeding itself, so I'd have to manually put bone meal in the top. But if I did some basic maths, we would be getting 360 bone meal an hour out of this. That's about 5.5 stacks of bone meal in an hour. It's not massive or amazing, but this is my farm and I don't really mind. And bone meal is one option. I'd have to work out how much this consumes in an hour, because it might be more efficient just to run this totally at bone meal and then manually insert it up here. And we still have some timings to sort out. I'm still not happy about the water timing compared with the top, and maybe we can pause this whilst the water is doing its thing so we can have it shut off and then come back again. I probably want to replace this so the piston goes straight down, straight up again. There's still work to be done on this, but I'm learning a lot. I hope you are enjoying me fiddling around with redstone and getting it wrong a lot, and generally having to suffer through. For the next video, I think I'm going to look, maybe in a save of this world, about ripping all of this out and just having hoppers continually feed so that we get a more regular supply of bone meal coming up into the system, rather than having to wait for the, however long this is, 7 or 8 seconds, maybe more, for this to come and then start dropping it out. I think that could be a big time saver. That might be the thing that actually makes this a lot more efficient. As far as this redstone, it's not great. It's kind of hanging out on a limb, flapping in the breeze. But this is about as good as I'm going to get without, some in-depth learning. Next video, after I fiddle around with the storage piece, what I will probably do is I'll break out every kind of individual component element and what I've used it for into more of a redstone instruction and what I've learnt. I think that might be quite fun, so definitely check in for that video. And that's enough hours on my moss farm. I'll catch you in the next one. Quindexter out.